everyone has different agendas when they choose to take that oath and put on that blue uniform, whether they're going to protect and serve or who they want to protect and serve and who they want to target. That's just the way the narrative is, not only with the police, with the legal justice system, with redlining.
Welcome to Policing in America, a podcast about race and policing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The goal is to have uncomfortable conversations to spark positive change. My name is Sergeant Tom Datro. I'm currently the officer in charge of a unit that creates, delivers, and maintains police training in the largest urban police department on the west coast of America. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Policing in America podcast. Today, I am very excited with our guest. Allow me to introduce him. Mr. Taheim Bryan is a producer, writer, director, and actor, as well as an entrepreneur, and a voice for many in this country who have felt voiceless. In 2019, Taheim's movie, Equal Standard, was released, and it was again re-released in 2020 amid what many believed was a pivotal moment in society in regards to race and policing. Taheim is from the great city of New York, specifically Queens. Interesting fact, if Queens was its own city, it'd be the fourth largest city in the country. And being from Queens, I can only assume Taheim is a Mets fan. Is that correct?
To be honest with you, I'm not really into baseball, but I love the way the Yankees hat looks better, to be honest.
Okay. He's treading in dangerous territory. And I thought we'd start off, though, we have a natural rivalry because I'm from Chicago originally. And I think we could both start off on the right foot by saying we agree that Michael Jordan was the greatest of all time.
For sure.
Okay, look at that. We're off to a great start.
All three Mikes, Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, and Michael Jackson.
Oh, I agree with all three of those as well. I am really thrilled and humbled that you're on the show, Taheim. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right into it. I know New Yorkers don't like to mess around. So the show, the movie, Equal Standard. I've watched it. I watched it once last night. I watched it just before our podcast. But before I say anything, talk a little bit about your movie, your motivation, your desire, what you hope people to get out of it.
Well, let me start off. I'm a writer producer. I don't want to relinquish my friend the guy Brendan. I also did it with so he's also co-directed the project. So let me just document that as well. But I actually wrote Equal Standard, not only just based off the systemic racism that we dealing with as a nation, but out of anger because I was pitching another show called Southside based in 1988. And we all know the industry lacks transparency. So when I was pitching the show, I had wrote the whole first season. I shot a sizzle reel with Method Man, had a different people talent attached to it. And they wanted to take me out of my creativity. They said I can't be creator. And none of that. They said I had enough skin in the game. So it kind of had me angry. So I took the project back and went home and heard a song by Alvin Garrett called By Myself. I caught like the tail end of the song. And the song just motivated me. And I couldn't stop writing. Like I never had a project take over me the way Equal Standard took over me. It was just like designed to, you know, how when they, and not to get biblical, about how Moses went up and then he just came down and just aged. It seemed like that's how Equal Standard affected me. It was just like, right. Every time I wanted to rest for a few minutes, it was forcing me to get back up to continue writing. So I already knew the potential and the level of the magnitude of what Equal Standard would do to affecting the people. And I emulated the formula of two great movies, which is Crash and Traffic, because those stories are movies that have interweaving stories. And when you're dealing with racism or religion or politics, you have to deal with them in several different temperatures. You can't come directly hard, and you have to be more objective and less subjective to get the people to want to speak out. So that's what made me want to do Equal Standard and allow it to breathe its own life, not to control it, because Equal Standard is way bigger than me. I'm only a vehicle for the actual message itself.
I appreciate that. It's a great sort of origin, genesis on how that came to be. Now, okay, so you see me, male white, blonde hair, blue eyes, right? And I see the movie, and it's the hard part for me was it just seemed like, I think you and I have the same goal in mind. We want to see justice at the end of the day, and we want to see that justice equally across the board, irrespective of all
mm,
the externalities of the human being, whatever that might be, race,
mm.
religion, creed, sexual orientation, all of it, it felt like the white cop was the villain. And for someone like me who's trying so hard, I've been in law enforcement for 18 years, and I've tried so hard to bridge the gap with my communities of color, with my white communities on the west side, and sometimes it feels as though that narrative gets a bit, it wears on people like me. And I'm just wondering, I don't think you were intentionally doing that, but what would you say to the officers? Majority of officers are white because the majority of the country, right? 62, 63%. So the majority of police officers are going to be white. How do you bring them into the conversation without making them feel like the villain?
Well, you got to look at it like this. You know, me being as a minority, I'm always looked at as the villain from birth. You know what I mean? Across my chest, I got convicted from the womb. It seems like just the fact of my pigmentation, I'm automatically the villain. So me, I'm only just changing the narrative or just speaking as with the whispers or what's reality going on within our communities. And that is with the way the police are policing our communities unjustly. So it's not like I'm making him out to be the actual villain. The way that they're actually supposed to protect and serve people of color, it's not like that. You know what I mean? We're more so being targeted. So for the officers that are not like that, this doesn't apply to you. But then again, it also affects you because you're not speaking out against the systemic racism and the policing that are coming into the communities that are only, whether they're trying to fill a quarter or they just want to target people of color. So I kind of blame a lot of the officers that are against it or speak against it, but choose not to speak out and the way equal standards, because you know the lack of accountability can lead to a lot of different directions. And that's why one thing I'm hoping that equal standard would open up the dialogue and get the officers that are against it to want to speak out. Because as you see with the Derek Chauvin case, the wall has starting to be penetrated when officers are starting to speak out against their own union officials or their own counterpart.
And that's something that it was interesting to me that the Derek Chauvin case was the catalyst for this,
Mm,
because it was the one incident. I've seen these now dating back from Trayvon Martin all the way through with all the popular cases, infamous cases, as it were. And this was the one incident that every officer I spoke to said, "Oh, this guy's going to jail." Like nobody said, "Well, he should have listened." You know, I heard that with Eric Gardner, or Walter Scott was another bad one where he's running away. But there's a lot of these controversial shootings, Michael Brown and whatnot. But this one, every officer said, "Oh, that cop's in a lot of trouble. That cop's going to jail." And that was the one that tipped the scales when it seemed like there was no controversy on the law enforcement side. Why do you think that was the one?
Well, for one, you seen from beginning to end of a man that's of a modern day lynching, actually, with a man's foot and nail on his neck for 9 minutes and a certain amount of seconds. That's basically a live lynching in the public eye. But don't get it wrong. Don't think that the legal justice system didn't try to find a way to try to manipulate that or change that, because look how long it had to take for a live lynching to actually take place, to have a conviction laid out, and then have the people have to be so happy, like, wow, look what we had to actually witness. Because if it wasn't for the young lady that kept her phone on from beginning to end, then they would have tried to find inconsistencies in the recording and try to say, well, the state chopped it on, the tape stopped. So how do we know that tape has not been manipulated, or it hasn't been touched or tampered with? But it's a sad situation that it had to take a live lynching on national television for people to say, you know what, I'm tired of it. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that there's always been some that wanted to speak out. And I also get the fact that it's a fraternity that the blue whites are under, as well as any street organization. There's a fraternity that you basically got to appease to when you sign up to certain things. But then there comes a point in time that those rules and those principles are become deviated, and it becomes a deviant, and it more so applies to a person's personal feelings about the individual, and whether it's about his religion, his gender of choice, or the color of his skin, or political desires. So it's, like I said, it's a sad situation that it had to take this, but it's a start. That's how I look at it.
And I appreciate your stance on it. Now, you and I believe, want the same thing. And the reason why I think we're in this cycle of, well, we're just going to get more training on implicit bias, or we're going to talk about racism, is because I think we're chasing down the wrong problem. And this is what I mean by that. I think there's a police culture that we need to address. And if we narrow it to only race, we're failing to frame the whole thing. My example of this is in 2016, there's a white guy by the name of Tony Timpa. Tony Timpa he was suffocated to death by 3 cops. Tony Timpa's a white guy, 3 cops on top of him, Dallas Fort Worth. They crushed him on camera. And it's about a 15-minute video. The similarities between Tony Timpa and George Floyd leaving this earth tragically are eerily simple if you put them up. The only difference is Tony Timpa was under the knees of these officers for longer, 15 minutes. So to me, and there's cases of these, Daniel Shavers, I have lists of names of white people, Hispanic people that were also killed by cops under extenuating circumstances, under controversial circumstances. So what I'm trying to do is say, look, if we only focus on this narrow segment, not saying it's not important, but it's narrow, we need to address the bigger issue, which is maybe how we're training cops overall. Could you see that as being a larger issue as well?
Of course, because it always starts with teaching. That's just whether you're a child or an adult, everything begins with the teaching. So the same way racism is taught, it could be eradicated through teaching. So policy also plays a major part in this, right? And, and being that the position that you hold, I've always was curious, is it two different, though it's under one benevolent society of the academy, I always wondered if it's 2 different types of policies of training. That's what I always wondered, because it seems like when officers, at least from the way it's being projected, when officers are coming in contact with whether a white assailant or anything like that, that's the least resort they go to for their weapon. They're more so probably be more diplomatic. But when it's a black person that's unarmed, it's more so attack and then ask questions. And that's kind of what makes me wonder, what is the objective? Is it taught to when you're going through these different ranges, you know how they show these statues of whether you show a person holding a child and which one you shoot, what you don't shoot. It makes me wonder, are these faces that's being placed in front of these officers people of color that and they're only looked as blacks are automatically looked as criminals. So shoot first and then ask questions, whether they're unarmed or not.
So to answer your question, and I'll be as honest and upfront with you as I can be, absolutely not the case. When, at least from my experience in my 18 years in the academy that I went through, there is no, 2 sides. Like, this is how we treat this segment. This is how we treat this segment. And also the tightrope that I would have to walk to cover up for an officer, as well as what I need to risk. So I have this, the quote unquote thin blue line, or the brotherhood, to give people on the, for lack of a better word, the outside. Think about what I have to risk. My freedom, because I would be culpable for covering for that officer. So my jail time, my career, obviously, because I lose that, my pension, and any wealth, money that I'm going to make over the course of my career, any overtime or any of that stuff. You have to give all of that up to cover this person. And it just seems like that, in my experience, is a little bit more of a myth. These cops are willing to give up everything for somebody that happens to wear the same uniform as they do, despite the appearances of a thin blue line.
Well, my thing is this: what's more important, the integrity, the moral obligation of the oath that you take on when you wear that shield or that uniform, or is it the monetary gain of the finances? Because today, it could be my brother, tomorrow it could be your sister. So, and that's usually when most laws are really change, is when it hits your doorstep, as opposed to it's dragged across mine. So that's where the real question should be really enforced. What's really more important, because I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not. You know what I mean? That's just the reality to it. So my thing is, when you do take this oath, you do take an oath to uphold and to protect, you know what I mean? And not to stereotype and target a particular race just because their personal feelings. And if that's what you're dealing with, then this is not the oath you need to take on. And I believe a lot of the officers that are against that right there should be speaking out. And of course, it has to be a group of people that speak out, because when it's just one, they can really easily sacrifice you and push you to the side. But that's why we have 5 fingers to create one fist. You know what I mean? So you try to bring everyone together and come in as a united force. The same way when you take that oath and become under that brotherhood, you move as a united force. And that's where a lot of us are failing. We're not moving as a united force. We're still stacked back and turning an open eye to the situation, and it's making it worse. It's escalating more, and it's leading to people say, you know what? I'm not even calling the police no more. I'm gonna take justice into my own hands. And we all know justice has a clear balance, whether penalty or reward. You know what I mean? So it has to be a clear slate across the board. You can't just say, well, if this man comes into the legal justice system with the same crime, same criminal background, we're going to give him 10 years because of the color of his skin. And then another person comes in that shares the pigment of the presiding judge or the prosecutor, same crime, no criminal background, and give him probation. That just goes to show that the laws are imbalanced, and the people that are enforcing them need to be removed from the positions that they hold.
Now, and that part of it is an area that I admit I'm more ignorant on, because I'm pretty well versed in the law enforcement end. I don't know the judicial system, and I've heard a lot of these studies, and I've heard that there are studies that not only are there disparities in sentencing, but also at the pigmentation. So if you're a light colored African American compared to a darker skin, I've heard that there are studies that show the darker the skin, the harsher the punishment. And I'll be honest, I haven't taken a bite from that apple, just because it's a part of the thing that I can't influence. I can't influence the prosecutors and the defense attorneys and the judges. So I feel like I can move the needle in the enforcement end of it. But Mr. Team, I want to give you some data, and this data isn't to make light of anything. So if you feel that I am, challenge me on it so I could restate it. But let's just take Chicago, my hometown. In 2020 in Chicago, there was 20 officer-involved shootings by the police. 7 were fatal. Okay, so they had 7 were fatal. 6 were of African-American men. But outside of the police, 620 people were killed. So when we talk about bodies and police killing and whatnot, the police, and I have these stats for New York, LA, Philly, Houston, it is always a fraction of the overall murders of Black men in the country. And I'm just wondering, when I talk to my cops and I say we have to stop killing people, most of my cops don't even shoot their gun, let alone kill somebody. It is just, historically speaking, most cops will go 30 years in this country, never shoot their gun, let alone kill someone. So killing of any race is a very rare event. How do we, like in the movie, it feels like everybody thinks this is happening constantly. But even in the movie, it was like 2 instances that was sort of the premise behind the whole movie. And I if I could scale it down to say, look, we're not hunting people with the purpose of killing them, I think I could get more buy-in on my side. But I want your take on that.
But that's an individualism statement right there, what you're not hunting. Let me go back into the statistics like you just also spoke on. Under the mapping police violence collected data, over 1,100 killings were by police in the year 2020. Now, of course, we also do know that there's a lot of black on black crime. But if you go through the statistics on white crime, it's a lot. The statistics is a lot greater than black on black crime. But just the thing is, it's not being publicized the way the minorities and the black communities is being scrutinized upon. So the cameras are more so recording the data and the censorship within the black communities, but it's not being recorded, or whether it's being recorded, but it's not being presented in front of the people on the killings on white crime. Let's go with that. Now, on the other question that you was asking me about, because my mind kind of shifted with
that's okay,
went into the statistics. We spoke about statistics. Now, the question that you just asked me again pertaining to the movie. And can you bring that back to me again?
Absolutely,
I appreciate
sir. Absolutely. it makes it feel like that police in general are just hunting with the purpose to kill Black men.
Mhm.
You know, and when I tell you in Los Angeles there was 1.8 million police encounters, 6 Black men were shot. And out of those 6, none of them were unarmed. They were all engaged in violent encounters. That is a sliver of the criminal element that our officers were engaged in. And it
Mhm.
just, you know, so there, and I know there's some cities that are different, you know, they're the smaller towns, and I understand that, but these big cities where we're all wearing body worn cameras and the TV cameras are on in the car, it, to think that we're just shooting Black men willy nilly, it's just not happening. At least that what I can see.
Well, you like I said, that's an individualism statement right there, because everyone has a different hidden agenda. And LA they have the highest crime rate right now, whether with police and stuff like that. Now, some men may have been armed, but that don't mean they went for their weapon. They may have found that they had a weapon on them down the line after they done shot the perp while he was running or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
But some people do come out with the intention of, I'm looking to remove a genocide or to attack. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot that may not, but we cannot turn a blind eye and be ignorant to the fact that there are some that carry out a brotherhood and has a different objective, a different mission outside of the shield of the protecting them with the qualified immunity to say, listen, I'm going to fire first. So that, like I said, that's an individual statement. It's not a global one.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone has different agendas when they choose to take that oath and put on that blue uniform, whether they're going to protect and serve or who they want to protect and serve and who they want to target. That's just the way the narrative is, not only with the police, with the legal justice system, with redlining. It's just a clear slate on how minorities are placed. It's almost like, basically, it's like Black against everything. It's Black against each other, because we have our own crisis that we're dealing with each other as well. And I'm a firm believer, say that we also need to address our own issues as well. But the issue at hand is the way the unions are targeting us, even with babies, how you jump out first with the objective, let me fire upon them, and then ask, what is the questions of what were you doing? Which I feel is unfair, because I've watched through numerous cases on television and on whether through body cam of a white person that's being accused of a crime, and they're fighting the police. Some even trying to stab them through the vest, and they still don't go through their firearm. Where an unarmed person could just get into an irate argument and just want to know, why are you stopping me? And it can lead to a total death. But let me ask you something. Let me ask you, being that you dealing with the training aspect of it, and you basically tapping into the mindsets of them while they're coming in at a young age. So anytime you create change, it's almost indoctrinating, where it's constantly pressuring. Yo, this is the enemy. This is the one you target. This is to shoot cinemas. The whole objective is get home to your family. Wake up in the morning, thank God that you woke up. Kiss your kids. Say, I'm getting home to my family the best way I can by any means. I'm gonna get there. So with the training aspect, let's just say I was an officer I was on one that wanted to become an officer. How would that training take place? And how do you vet out the ones that are not really there to protect and serve, that are only there to protect their private entity of a brotherhood that may be some form of white supremacy? How can you vet that, or do you even look to vet that out, as well as are you looking for some of them that may have been bullied as young children and looking to prove a point, or have they ever engaged with people of color before they decide to wear that uniform? Like, if you could explain to me a little on that, on the training and the things that you vet out and the things that you target the most before you clear these individuals to become a NYPD or LAPD or whatever the case is.
Absolutely, sir. It's a great question. And remind me if I forget, the whole idea of this get home at all costs. I rail against this, and I'll tell you why. But let me answer your question. I could only speak to the academies that I know and the ones that I have a professional relationship across the country. And most of the big ones, it's going to be New York, Chicago, LA, Houston, and Philly. Those are the big 5. They are all very similar in how they run their academies and how they do their vetting. So you have to apply to be an officer. Some of them need a college requirement, some don't, but there's some kind of an education requirement, be it high school or college. And then you take a battery of tests. So you do your aptitude test, your writing test, and you take a psychology written test, and then you do a psychology interview. And those things are recorded. Some agencies do a lie detector test. I know for my agency, I had to sit for a lie detector test, and all of them do thorough background investigation. So that's a background investigator who will show up to your neighbors' houses, who will show up to your old employers, who will ask questions and basically do what's called a background investigation and try to get as much information, try to find any inconsistencies in your story that you've put forward, because you are going to be entrusted as a government agent to potentially enforce laws and take a life doing so. So I agree with you. The vetting process needs to be stringent, extreme, and they need to go through everything in your life, because they're going to give you a gun and some degree of immunity to take a life in the enforcement of laws if you're following the rules. So that is there just to get in the door. Then you got to go through the academy. And during the academy, you're doing scenarios, testing. You're having conversations with behavioral social scientists that come in and watch you do your role play scenarios. And ideally, you try to find people who might be overly aggressive, or who the wording would be, they just don't get it. Like you can't come in here to do those kinds of things. We do scenarios where you put headgear on and you have to hit people, and we'll throw in officers to give excessive force, and we expect the recruits to grab them and pull them off. So we put them in these moral conundrums to see if they react, to see if they hesitate, or do they react right away and know the difference between right and wrong. And then you got to go through a year of probation, which means now you're out of the academy and you're sitting next to an officer in the car. And it is ideally the case that that officer is training you the policies, the way to do it the right way. And, you know, in some of these organizations, especially, we're going to say more progressive organizations, New York, Chicago, Philly, Boston, you have a pretty good representation of the police force and the community they serve. So I know in Los Angeles, for example, the majority of cops on Los Angeles are male Hispanics. That's the majority. I think white officers make up 27% of the department, and they're like 29% of the society. Black males in Los Angeles are 10% of the department, but 9% of society. So we specifically tried to, and I say we, the police law enforcement tries to mirror the communities they serve. Chicago's a little different. They don't have as robust of a, what's the word, when you're trying to get people to apply, sort of like an
applicants.
Yeah. They don't have like a real robust recruiting scenario,
recruit, okay.
You know, in the inner city.
Yes.
And there's a lot of conflict and history with Chicago in the inner city. Not a lot of people of color want to be police officers because they think it's just this, you know, white supremacist Confederate flags in the locker rooms, and they don't want to be a part of that. Or their friends and family. Maybe you have someone of color who says, hey, I want to make a difference, much like the main character and his wife. You know, these are these are people who want to be part of the organization, and maybe their friends would say, why do you want to do that? You're an Uncle Tom, or you're a traitor. A lot of my friends who are officers of color get that from the society, from their community. They hear these things and it hurts them. So they say, you know what? I don't even want to be a part of this program. But we try vigorously to root those things out. If you look at the majority of, my goodness, the police chiefs, the staff, the people in charge, people of color across the board. There's plenty of police chiefs of color across the board that are leading these organizations. I think in one of your statements in the movie, it said leadership starts at the top and goes down. Leadership starts at the top. And that's where you have to. So a lot of our leadership are people of color. So when I say we, again, I'm talking to law enforcement in general.
For sure.
They've made a concerted effort, because what I want to make clear for you is, you know, my guest, I know there's a history that comes with this job. There are times when law enforcement was on the wrong side of that history. But for my experiences, we've tried diligently to make up ground. I just worked not too long ago in the inner city down in South Central. And man, I'm driving around South Central, waving, stopping, talking to people on their porch, people inviting me back for the UFC fight that night. Like, we've made incredible strides in general. And what I think happens, Mr. Team, is that these lightning strike instances, these killings, these unjustified killings, things like George Floyd and Walter Scott.
The list, Ray
There
Shaw
you go.
Brooks, the list,
Yes,
the list. The list goes on. Yeah.
It does, sir. Those numbers, every one of those is important, but it's not happening every day. And that's why they're so impactful, is because they're not happening every day. And so it feels like when you see this, it's like when a cop dies, and all the lights come up and all the people line the freeways and it's a big deal, and the big show. It's because it doesn't happen a lot. And so but the impact is monumental, right? The loss of a young child to a community at the hands of the government, which is the police, is incredibly impactful, as it should be. The government shouldn't be taking lives. And so I understand the pain, but at the same time, it's so hard for me to tell cops, to stop killing us. I heard this when I was on the line all summer, people calling me racist and saying, stop killing us, to me and hundreds of cops and everybody around us. We've never even shot our gun. I was in an OIS, young in my career, but in general, most officers don't shoot their gun. And so we want to root out the bad ones. Absolutely. There's an old saying that is, and I want to get your feedback. The old saying is, nobody hates a dirty cop more than a good cop. And I believe that I've experienced that as well, but please give me your response.
Yeah, well, a little bit makes me see that your responses are maybe a little too subtle when you say it's not as prevalent or not as frequent as white cops killing unarmed Black people, because it is extremely prevalent. If we didn't have cell phones and cameras, we wouldn't see that. So before there was cell phones and cameras, trust this, there is a lot more that's not being documented. A lot of these incidents that are occurring now were cases that may have been 6 months old, 8 months old, and now the tape just got a chance to be released. And everyone is still trying to lie on the backs of the George Floyd. Right, like minorities should be just so happy that justice was served. But look what we had to go through. Look what we had to witness to get a conviction. And which is a sad situation that showed how a legal justice system, where you still got to take an officer through 2-3 weeks of trial when evidence is clearly, blatantly, directly in your face of showing what took place, and it wasn't a protect and serve. How an officer just actually killed an unarmed man that was crying for help, and his other officers were standing around not doing anything. So when you say that the old saying about all good cops don't like bad cops, hate bad cops, but if they hated them that much, why aren't they speaking out? And like how you said earlier, you're afraid to lose your pension, you're afraid to lose your job, you're afraid to be vetted out as like, you're a traitor. So it just shows there is no moral obligation, there is no real integrity but the paycheck. Now, if everyone chose to say, listen, I'm only out for the money, the world would be a lot worse than what it is. These movements that's been going on in the world would just take the money and fall back. But there's a lot of integrity that lasts a lot longer than a dollar. A dollar you can spend and it's gone. Your integrity is something that's rooted in you that you don't just leave like that. But let me also go into the fact of when we spoke about leadership roles, and you say how y'all have people of color in leadership roles. In a household, a mother and father are leadership, but the siblings are closer. There's a different bond. So you can have leadership. That doesn't mean the brotherhood is going to look at that leadership and follow his direction. So there's many people that are the CEOs of companies, but don't have the power to fire you. They just have the title. So putting a Black face inside the front of a camera, which are sometimes a lot of these black officials that are leaders are really not in support of the people. They're really just skin folk, what we would call them, as opposed to ones that really speak against the injustice that's going on inside the Black communities. A lot of them are just there just to be a face and rooting on in the background, like, well, listen, they shouldn't have been doing this anyway. Like, listen, at the end of the day, killing a man is killing a man. However, there is no full justification, because if it was a full justification, the tables can turn, you know what I mean? So just like you see what's going on in the world with Gaza and the Palestine, it's just the world is in a real delicate place of hatred right now. And to have and to be on the podcast and to make it seem as it's subtle, because it's not being broadcasted on television every day. I do believe that it is happening every day. It's just not being documented. I don't think it's just only we just happen sporadic. I don't believe that. I believe it's more that it just hasn't been put to the forefront yet, because it will come, because the same tool as they give us to help us is the same tools that we're using it to hurt, to place the blame and hold accountability for the officers that are being illegal and treating people unjustly. Because if we didn't have these PDFs, it would be hearsay, because before there was cameras, people say, well, if you had footage to show what took place before, so then when you show footage, then it goes into another mindset. Well, what happened before the camera turned on? And it's like everyone tries to find a way to show the officers justifiable way because he took an oath or she took an oath. You know what I mean? But it's still, no matter the oath that you took, you violate that oath if you chose to be afraid to come in contact with people of color or people that don't look like you. You know what I mean? It should be a more de-escalating policy that's put in place. When you're confronted, don't just hide behind your weapon. The same way with Dante Wright, that was just killed in the police vehicle, and the female officer yelled out, "Taser, taser," who've been on the force 26 years. Like, we all know, let's be real. Like, come on, you got 2 male officers that are already there to neutralize the situation. And it's a traffic stop at a climate of pandemic where everything is on backlog, and you're holding a gun in your right hand, knowing that tasers are usually put on the left side or the side that's where it's, I forgot the word that
you're
they
like
use,
non-dominant
non-dominant. That is correct. The non-dominant side, and you're holding it with a right hand. And for a few seconds, you keep saying, "I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you." You can tell the difference of a hand grip and the weight and the color if it's a weapon, if it's not. So I believe a lot of this is psychological. That's really being placed into the forefront. And in the legal justice system, it always takes is just to stir up doubt. Just for her saying taser, that's enough to create doubt within the juror's mind. Well, she did say taser. That's like me saying you pull me over and I say you're a stick-up kid and I blow your head off. I could sit there and say, listen, I thought he was a stick-up kid, and then the jury said, well, did he say you was a stick-up kid? Yes. So then how can you say that I didn't really believe you was a stick-up kid? So a lot of that is just method and psychological that they choose to use as a method to shield what their intentions was really about. But go on.
No, and I appreciate your take on this. Do me a favor, sir. I think you said a term. It was skin folk.
Skin folk.
What does that mean?
Skin folk meaning you just look like me, but you're not in support of the things that I'm dealing with. You're not on the front line with my plight or my arguments. You just there because you share the same pigment. So you're just a skin folk to me.
I get you.
You're not.
No, it makes sense.
The same way in a brotherhood, you may have a white officer that shares the same pigment but don't share the same policy.
Right. I get it. That makes sense. I know it's hard for us to do this in a short amount of time. What I'm trying to get with you is a place where, again, I think we both want the same thing. We both want accountability. We both want to see less violence. I think we're looking at it from different lenses, not right nor wrong. I look at it from the lens of mistakes happen, bad actions happen, and there's a lot of cognitive impairment that takes place when people are under stress. And there's also implicit bias, and there's historical, right? I think all that coalesces together to like a sausage mill and makes a bad decision. And I'm truly hoping that from your perspective, it's not just, someone who looks like me, who's nefariously gotten into the government just for the sole purpose of killing a black man. Because I don't look at it like that. I would just basically add it on when you globalize the way your statement was, because it's the verbiage that you was using. It was almost like you was generalizing by saying we don't take this job with the notion, and you can't generalize that statement. I see. That's like me saying all blacks are not criminals, you know what I mean? Or all whites are not into white collar crime, you know what I mean? That's so you can't. So when you're dealing with the verbiage, it's a real delicate space. It could change the direction on the meaning on what you're trying to convey. So that's what I'm saying. Of course, we all want to be treated fairly, you know what I mean? We all want to we want to relinquish racism. If you can't relinquish it, at least be respectful
to the counterpart. We all know we're not asking you to love the person next to you, but at least respect his pigment, his walk of life, and the things that he's engaged in, because not everybody's walk of life is the same. Some people come up under a survival mentality and doesn't look at life in a moral obligated way, as opposed to people that had the silver spoon or had the privilege, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So the ones that had the privilege would not see things in a survival instinct mindset, because they never had to be forced to try to find a way to survive and eat, and to put a roof over their on their head, or put food inside their children's stomach. Those are the things that a lot of other people had no choice but to do. And when you're a survivalist, morality, you're so far out of touch when it comes to that, because you're just trying to find a way how I'm going to put the next meal on my table, how I'm going to keep the lights on in my home, as opposed to you going home to a family that has your mother and father in a nice home, and the electricity stays on, the refrigerator is full. So you're living. So it's two different mindsets. That's like a domesticated lion to one that's living in a jungle.
Yep, and absolutely. And I think, Mr. Team, this is where I do bring an interesting, unique perspective. You know, male, white, again, blonde hair, blue eyed, for people that don't see. But I grew up in South Side of Chicago. Mom on welfare, 17 years old, don't know my dad. He died years ago. Government cheese back in the 70s. So I know poverty, and I also saw the cops treated us. And they were not good to us. You know, I was not somebody, as this little white kid, running around thinking, oh, here are the police, let me wave hi. They were crappy to us. They were crappy to my mom, because we were poor. So we were in a crime area. And cops, man, I hated cops growing up. It wasn't like I just felt comfortable around them, or I would wave, or they'd wave at me like the suburbs. So I know that when I'm in the inner city, I feel at home in the inner city, because that's my roots. So I know when I speak to people in the inner city, irrespective of color, I need them to be comfortable with me. I don't want them to have the experience that I had, which is, oh, you're poor, you're probably up to no good. You're probably going to be a criminal. I don't want to make that equation. And so and there's people like me. When you talk to a lot of cops and get to know a lot of us, you'll see a lot of us come from these humble upbringings that really want to make a difference in the places we've come. Go ahead, sir.
And that's fun. A humble upbringing, you're still up under the same regiment of the teachings that you're taught. So now, I don't doubt that you may have went through your issues with the police and had your run-ins or brush-ins like that. However, when you use that as leverage to where a minority, it again, not to take away from the things that you went through, it almost dilutes what people of color going through. That's like people when if we're speaking about race, and I'm speaking to a person that's not of color, and they say, well, I have a lot of black friends, or I dated a black girl. Like, we so far out of touch when we're dealing with things like that. I don't doubt that those people may have dated blacks or things, or how they run ins. However, it dilutes the blunt end of we're going to, because it's like this with us. It's constant. And I tried to show it throughout the film in a clear, balanced way. See, I'm not angry on the way things are going, because I believe change was going to come. So I'm not an angry writer. You know what I mean? I'm just a writer that's trying to share the whispers that are not being taught in the Hollywood format. You know what I mean? I'm using my voice and to change the narrative and show it in a clear spectrum, as opposed to just saying, let's just go out there and shoot police. Let's just go out there and create a race riot. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants that. You know what I mean? That nobody wants bloodshed. Nobody's looking for things of that nature. However, if we don't have the accountability, you can never tell which way the direction will come. Thomas Jefferson once said, let me try to see the exact statement. Thomas Jefferson said, when a legal justice system, I can't even remember the way he said it, because my mind, it'll come back to me with the way statement, the way Thomas Jefferson was saying, dealing with unjustly in America, and where it comes a point in time that duty becomes a chance where you have to respond back in the same manner that's which really being enforced. You know what I mean? So it's we dealing with a extremely delicate situation right now, and it has to be treated delicately. No one wants to hear someone say, "Well, I went through that too," and it's like, well, listen, I don't doubt everyone may have went through it, but there's different levels, there's different classes
Oh,
to
sure.
where a person goes through it. Like you may have went through it, and on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 3. I'm constantly at a 10, you know what I mean? Where it's like, wow, you know what I mean? If we didn't have these PDFs, you wouldn't have got a chance to see so much more. And I can only imagine some of the teachings in school where some of the history may have been changed around or different things. But one thing that we do need to tap into is accountability. You know what I mean? It has to be a clear slate. We do need to try to change the way some of these policies are within the police department and stop protecting the ones that are enforcing injustice and making the union officials look bad. And even some of these union reps, I do believe, need to be removed from their positions as well. You know what I mean? Because getting in front of the media and say, listen, I'm on support of the people too. But then once they come off camera, they sit there and say, look, listen, continue what you're doing. You know what I mean? And we'll find a way to fix it. You know what I mean?
So let me,
again,
no, please go ahead. Finish your thought.
no, but I wanted to bring up to you what you was mentioning about the getting home, about when I said
Oh,
that.
yeah, thank you. And if I could just clarify, when I say those things, what I try to do is identify. It's kind of like when the young kid in the field and they don't have a dad and they act up, and I share with them, look, I didn't have a dad either. But you still got to be good for mom, and you got to be even more, so it's my way of just helping people know that they're not alone out there. Like,
Yeah.
and even though maybe his dad was worse, whatever it is, I'm not trying to compare, but I want people to know I have empathy. That's my goal behind it. But so I'm going to tell you about that. And then please, I want to ask you, because I want you to share some of your experience with the law enforcement. But I have always been against this idea of going home to family. I've heard this before, and I've heard it for years. All cops want to do is get home to their family or some version of that. That's a problem for me, because if all you want to do is go home, well, go drive for Amazon or go be an accountant or do any of the number of jobs that will increase the likelihood of you getting home at night, because policing is supposed to be noble. I'm supposed to be the one running towards the Twin Towers so that other people can get home. Like, I don't like this idea of cops saying this, because it diminishes what we as a society expects of them. You're from New York. These cops walk around, people say, there go New York's finest, right? You get that title just by walking down the street. They'll say New York's finest. And I always say, earn that title. Never say that. Never say, all I want to do is go home. Instead, if somebody asked me that, I would say, all I want to do is make sure my community get home at night, because that's the nobility you have to carry with you. But I just wanted to touch on that. But sir, I would like for you to share your experiences. I have to assume you've had some pretty negative experiences with cops.
Of course. But now, also, let me go back. It came back to my chain of thought with what Thomas Jefferson said. He said, when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. That's what Thomas Jefferson once said. But of course, I've had my brush up against the legal justice system. I gave the system 12 years. I did state and federal time. So I had blunt on with it, you know what I mean, due to the choices that I made. And I wouldn't want to turn my hands back at all, because it taught me so much. I've learned from my lessons, and it shaped me to the person that I am today, to be able to be clear and impartial. I like to be fair. And that's one thing I've always loved to be, was fair. Even when I was a part of a previous life, I never wanted to rule with an iron fist. I tried to rule with fairness. You know what I mean? The things that I would enforce is the things that I would be on the front line doing myself. And that's what I feel a lot of these other union officials and a lot of other people are not doing. They're setting out these missions and these goals, like, yo, get out there and you do this. And they not standing on the front line doing that for themselves. You know what I mean? And but yeah, like I said earlier, of course, I've had my share with the legal justice system, and of course, I made my decisions to tap into that, the lifestyle I chose, and
you're using
that, like
powerful.
I said,
you're using powerful language. You're saying the lifestyle I chose, the decisions I made. Do you feel
correct.
as though the system was unfair to you, or do you feel as though the system worked, for lack of a better word, and now you've grown from that? How do you how do you
Well,
make sense of that?
well, one thing I never like to use my complexion or my things I've been through as a handicap. You know what I mean? Because I've still made my decisions. Do I think that I was afforded some of the same opportunities? Of course, there was opportunities there, but living arrangements and conditions can alter that to where it changes your mobility, your direction, to where you could deviate, where it could be where you may started out with a mother, father home, and then by being raised by a single parent home because one was abusive. So you're forced under certain situations that can force you to become a deviant from the natural way of life of one step at a time and using the ladder. So I chose a different route, which may not have been the best route later, but at that particular time, that was the better route to choose, you know what I mean? Because again, when you have to keep lights on and you want to keep food on the table and you seeing your family suffering, no one wants to see the cornerstone of their household going through abuse or suffering and can't provide equally to the other siblings. So you make a decision, you know what I mean? And the streets always have all the answers that you may need or lacking from the questions, and they're very intriguing, you know what I mean? Because there's so much different things that could be glorifying to the eyes that you may not see, that may not be sour for the stomach, you know what I mean? But you still choose to latch on to it, like, yo, listen, I like nice clothes. I like to have the same respect of the next person in the street. I don't want to be looked at as a bum or my family doesn't have anything. You know what I mean? So circumstances can force you to deviate from using the ladder. Like I tried to stay in school while choosing my lifestyle, but I had to make a clear balance. I said, you know something, I have to sacrifice something. I can't keep both. And I wind up sacrificing the lateral way of life to just become more hands-on and focus on the lifestyle that I was indulging in at that particular time. And it cost me half my life. Am I bitter behind that? No, because I learned so much from it. I've grown so much in life, but some people choose to use their color or their religion or their political beliefs as a crutch, you know what I mean, or a handicap. I choose not to, you know what I mean? I'm not going to hide behind my pigment. I know who I am as an individual. I know I'm one of God's children that's greater than what any other person's opinion has out there into society, any teachings a person has about me. I'm not who you think I am. Just as you come on, you think I'm 100% one person when you find out to be 100% wrong on who I am, you know what I mean? So I try to be a clear representation of the trials and tribulations that I went through and let the people that come from my walk of life from before use me as a staple to show that it's possible. Change is inevitable. But when you come from the situations that I came from, you be afraid of change because you think change is going to kill you. But it takes you not changing that can kill you, which will force you to change. And that's what led me to creating change in my life and being a voice and using my talent and my creativity to tap into the mindset of the people that you don't get a chance to hear from and change the narrative on how Black writers or filmmakers are scrutinized upon. We're looked at as glorified writers as opposed to white America or Asians. They're looked at as entertainment writers because we're so subjective to everyone else. So they'll feel like if they're so subjective to everyone else, they got to be subjective on each other because we're very hard on each other, my people. You know what I mean? We're extremely hard. We make one error, then we're frowned upon forever. You know what I mean? And that's one thing we have to learn from and on. But mirror image, that's the one thing I live by. Mirror image is a reflection of the action that we set in motion today. So I look in that mirror, and in order for me to make change with anyone else, I have to change that person that looks in that mirror. And the best way is change the narrative, you know what I mean, and use it as a weapon and not weaponize it.
I love what you just said. I'm going to play that back when I listen to this again, but especially change the narrative. And if I could pause there, that's where I'd like to land with you on something. I want to change the narrative and say, while policing can get better, and while it does have a history, it's moving in the right direction. And if I could get that with you, then we can keep building, these bricks, lay one brick at a time, and we're going to have the Great Wall of China eventually. And so
Hmm.
if I can change the narrative that bad things happen and it's getting better, and you have
Hmm.
cops like me who really want to make a difference, who aren't doing it for the color of skin or any of that. They're doing it for the nobility of the profession, to help people who need help. And if I could have a voice like yours, who's so influential and can reach millions of people, we can start. Here's what I don't want. I don't want a young black man to get pulled over by a police officer and only think they got pulled over because of a race, and then for that to escalate. I don't want my cop to think that this guy's going to kill him. I don't want him to think that this cop's going to kill him. And then these two worlds collide. And now both of them shouldn't be worried about that, because the kid in the car doesn't want to kill the cop. The cop doesn't want to kill the young man, but they think that each one wants to hurt each other. That's what I want to change.
Well, and that's going to take time, because when every incident that you see is played out, it's always the narrative of like, yo, roll your window down, get out the car, don't reach.
Right.
Shot goes off. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then, so of course you do be afraid. This times now I could get pulled over, and no, I don't have anything illegal, but the mind automatically wonders, like, do I got anything illegal on me that can, any sharp thing? It's just a sad situation to have to live in fear and wonder if your life is at stake every time you walk out that front door, and every time that siren goes on while you're in that front seat. You try to roll all your windows down. You try to keep your hands on the steering wheel, but you're still being confronted with aggression. You know what I mean? Or fabricated lies like, "Yo, I saw you make an illegal turn," and it's like, no, you couldn't have saw you make an illegal. You must got the wrong individual.
Right.
And it always starts with probable cause. You know what I mean? And as long as you could start it out, the probable cause was because I saw you make an illegal stop. And then that's usually what leads to an incident, to a lawful arrest. You know what I mean? And a lot of times there really was no probable cause. It was just based on the officer's mindset. I'm going to profile this individual and say I saw them make an illegal turn. And who are you to deny him from saying that? Because he is a legal justice officer. He's the one that uphold the law. You know what I mean? So why would I confront someone that's here to uphold the law when they forget the people that are upholding the law? They're human. They're not robots, you know what I mean? So they have their issues, you know what I mean? They come in with bad days and say, yo, I'm going after anyone with blue vehicles. I'm going after anyone with red vehicles. You know what I mean? Individualism goes a long way, you know what I mean? And then to use the shield as a crutch to try to say as if, well, why would the officers want to do that? That's the question that we ask. Why would you want to come at us like that? Just because we playing our music too loud, because we're in a fancy vehicle, because we're smiling under, we still find ways to smile under distress that we're still being forced on every single day. It seems like that makes the opposing team or the oppressors even more bitter, to say, yo, how are these people still able to live in humor and still find ways to be successful when we just killed someone in their neighborhood? How are they still able to smile? Because that's all we know is trauma. That's all we've experienced was trauma. So any other trauma, it's like, look, we've been living under trauma since birth. So of course we're going to find ways to find humor around everything. You know what I mean? We've lived under trauma for so many years that dark humor is what's humorous to us, as opposed to someone else. Look at, don't laugh. What people say, don't laugh at that, which will be funny to us.
Yes, absolutely. I understand exactly what you're saying. I would like to share with you my opinion, and I want to just maybe give you a peek behind the curtain. This is where I think there's an issue. Police officers are often judged by how productive they are, and productivity is only done in the form of arrests, citations, summonses. That's a good cop, a cop that makes an arrest. A kid is a bad guy. And I've always said, if you judged firefighters by how many fires they put out, and that's a good firefighter, we'd have a lot more fires burning. But you don't judge a firefighter by that. And I'd like to change. I believe this. If we took that as our scale of good cop, took that away and said, listen, making arrests is just one thing you do, but it's not the totality of your existence within society. then I think cops would stop making these pretext stops. I think they would stop trying to stop everybody because they're searching. They're just searching for something. Maybe you got a gun, maybe you got a warrant, maybe you got a little dope in the car. I need something to be productive. So my boss, my sergeant, my commanders, they see that I'm out there working. And I really think that's an issue, because if you put that pressure on them to produce, but you know what, if I'm in your neighborhood and I'm working, and I don't stop anybody all night long in Queens, a little area, I'm circling around, but there's no robberies, there's no burglaries, there's no vandalism. Well, that's productivity. The absence of crime should be somehow captured, but it isn't. And I think that's a fundamental problem with this profession.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It shows once the police became a business, then everything relied on numbers. And of course, we would say a good cop is one that didn't have to draw his weapon.
Right.
Just like in the Black community, we would call a good kid as one that never used drugs. He's a good kid. He's never been arrested, or he never used drugs. You know what I mean? So of course, everything is based on productivity. If crime rate is down, that means the police should be rewarded. Like, listen, there hasn't been no crime in our area in 6 months to a year. Everyone should be rewarded about that because they was able to keep things at a neutralized base. But that also comes in the policing that are policing that community. You know what I mean? With the officers that we get that come within our community, they're not from our community. So a lot of them come in, some of them come in with a fear mentality because they never been confronted with someone of color. You know what I mean? So they be fearful. So, and then they're taught, don't let them get too close, draw your weapon and shoot. You know what I mean? And then that enhances the fear, you know what I mean? But again, if you remove or change the policy from within, you can change the way the officers are engaging outside within the field, as well as holding the bad ones accountable for their actions. Because it's like in anything, you only got to be right once, you only got to be wrong once to be able to be held accountable. If you do something right, you're going to be held accountable for doing something right. If you do something wrong, you're going to be held accountable. Where it's a lack of accountability. It's like there's so many laws that are there to protect them from the different things before they could even get close to the word of accountability. Where it's like, don't worry, our unit officials are there. Don't say nothing. We'll put you on desk duty for a little while. Maybe do some community services, and we'll go to court. The union reps will come in, or you retire, you know what I mean? And then the officers feel like, all right, look, I got away with it. So then that makes the next set of trainees that come into the game, well, look, wow, we got carte blanche. We could do what we want, you know what I mean? So I'm coming up in there, the first person I see get out of line, I'm going to shoot first, then ask questions later, you know what I mean? And it's not all of them, but the ones that are there need to be vetted out and rooted out, you know what I mean? But some of them are so, they feel that they let down their fraternity. It's like in college, you have an oath. Once you usually try to die by that oath. Like, listen, this is the oath that we live and we die by. You know what I mean? But it comes a point in time that oath has become detrimental to the key values of what the oath was actually implemented and put in place, and then it frowns upon the whole union,
right?
Completely. And when it affects the whole union, then it's a problem. You know what I mean? So sometimes you just got to say, listen, we got to get you out of here. You creating too much problems within our infrastructure, and you making us all look bad, because it's like dominoes. They're all gonna fall,
right?
All of them. You know what I mean? But everyone's afraid to speak out, because if you speak out, we're gonna snatch your pension, or you're gonna be frowned upon, or you're gonna get numerous threats on the phone. We're gonna kill you if we say you. You got to go through that type of trauma to speak out. And then you got your own peer pressure of the people that look like you saying, oh, you played yourself. How could you even take that test? How could you even do that? Like, you know, so the teachings has been so distorted, and the messages has been conveyed so wrongly now, that a lot of it has to be dismantled and rebuilt. That's how I feel. A lot of it needs to be dismantled and rebuilt. The same way how some people say, we need police reform, defund the police. So I don't think taking money, you know what I mean? Because when they say defund them, we're not saying remove and finance it. We're saying allocate it to better training, instead of sending police to a person that's suffering from mental illness,
Sure.
send someone from mental illness. The
Sure.
same way if they say, yo, if you call 311, they say, if this is an emergency, dial 911. You know what I mean?
Right.
There should be separate unions where that money is allocated instead of just pushed behind police for making mistakes. Because when you have that type of money behind you, you know there's problems within a system.
Yeah.
It's just the reality to it. If you have $1 billion just waiting there for you, don't worry. We have the high top lawyers. We have the best officials. We'll just say that, yo, you was going through a bad day, or he grabbed your weapon, or hopefully he had any form of arrest, even if it was a arrest for marijuana. He had an arrest. You know what I mean? One arrest is an arrest. That's enough to stand on the guy's a criminal just because he's been ran through the system. But you don't see or you don't hear the guy was acquitted from a crime that was fabricated. It was never a crime that he really committed, and that's why he was vindicated. But the arrest alone, he's been arrested, so they show a mugshot picture. But then so it's the way the media is projecting the images of whether the perpetrators or the ones that we will call police officers that are really the ones that may be bad during the situation, because communication is everything. It's not always de-escalate a situation by carrying your gun or using your taser or things of that nature. Now, we all know there are some times where it may be warranted, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Where you have to use your firearm or you have to use your taser. But you know, I'm a firm believer. I'm in support of firearms because I don't believe firearms are the problem. I believe it's the conscious mind behind the firearm where the problem lies. You know what I mean? So and until we attack the mindset of the people that are hiding behind these weapons and see what other lifestyles that they're living outside of that union, because mostly a lot of us live a double life. You know what I mean? Some that you see in front of the camera and some that you see that you don't see when the camera's off. You know what I mean? And those are the things that we need to be more so mindful and address of these mental evaluations, what a lot of us suffering from, because it don't just happen. They just, like you said, we don't just come in with the notion, but sometimes the mindset and the pressure, a lot of them hasn't been faced under the type of trauma that most minorities lived in. Like I said, we come from trauma, so we adapt to a trauma. When we see something that's not traumatic or something like that, that's when our antennas go. When we start seeing good things, you're like wondering, like, yo, why this person being so good to me? You know what I mean? That's a sad situation when you gotta wonder when someone's trying to extend their olive branch to you, that you wonder there's an agenda behind that, as opposed to if it was just trauma being faced, and you're like, all right, I expect that. You know what I mean? But no one likes a hidden or secretive racist. No one likes a sneak thief. If you're gonna take it from me. Don't sneak it from me.
Right.
If you don't like me, say you don't like me, so I know how to deal with you. I'm not going to hate you. I just know how to deal with you. You know what I mean? And a lot of this is hidden.
That's a New York frame of mind, right? Just be upfront with me. And if you want to be an ass, but be upfront.
Exactly.
About it. That's what we don't like about LA people, is that they're real fake in front of you. Same with Chicago. You want to be an ass, but let's just get it out in the open and let's just get it over.
Exactly.
With. Yeah.
Exactly.
I hear you. Now, how does someone like you and I, how do we use our passion for this despite the reasons we're coming at it from different reasons? I don't think that, I'm surrounded by a bunch of, people who are trying to subvert or keep, a class of people down. I feel like I'm surrounded by a lot of good people, some of which make errors and mistakes. And you have a point of view, which is I respect completely. But how do you and I get past that to get to a point where we can work together and say, look, irrespective of why we think this, let's put that aside, because now we're at a point where we can work together. What can people like you and I do?
Be less subjective. Be open-minded. Be objective. You know what I mean? Get into the questions on why do you hate? Why is that hatred building up so much? What is it that you've experienced? What did you go through that's making you hate? What have you been taught? Communication, just keeping it going like this. This is the key to tapping and chipping at a wall, is to keep hitting it. Just keep hitting it, and getting people to want to speak out. And that's why the way Equal Standard was designed, it's designed to where you want to speak. because the trailer, when you see the trailer, it snatches you. After you see the film, it becomes a part of you. And then you want to watch it again. Like, wow, did I miss something? Like, who wrote this? Like, how did he know the perspective and the dynamics of a police officer unless he's a police or unless he's an officer or he comes from a officer background, or is he a gang affiliate, or how can he speak to gang members unless he's a flag holder, you know what I mean? Or how can he speak of an Irish family unless he has Irish blood in him or engaged with Irish people, you know what I mean? So, but and the reason how you do that is because New York City is a melting pot of all ethnicities, all backgrounds. So you come in contact with everyone. So as you come in contact, you learn them. You living in buildings with different ethnicities and background, and you seeing the things that are humorous to them, and you seeing the things that are not. One thing we all clearly understand, whether we speak multiple languages or not, we clearly understand violence. We all understand ass whooping, you know what I mean, or disrespect. Everyone, that's a universal language, you know what I mean. You can say it in many different languages you want, but it all means the same, clearly. Being biased or being disrespectful or being disrespected or having justice or being treated unjust. Those are universal languages that we all can understand. And that's why Equal Standard was designed to be treated fairly. It shows you the pros and cons. Like, if accountability becomes a moral obligation, this is what you'll get. If it doesn't, that pressure cooker is going to bust and justice is going to be taken into their own hand. And it also shows, I also speak in the way police officers, when he spoke to Chris Jones, when he tells him, never let the sickness of another man's mind be a crutch for you deviating from the moral obligation to the moral that we hold. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. So I'm not naive to the oaths that we all share, because whether I'm a cop or I come from the street, we still adjust and tap into an oath to protect what we represent, you know what I mean? Whether it's your side of the aisle or it's on my side of the aisle. And this way I presented it, and the way I presented it in there, when he goes to speak to me and Croft about retrieving that radio back, when he says, listen, the same way y'all put that truce together, you know what I mean? Whether y'all liked it or not, it's either you give the radio back or they're going to come. And if they come, only two things are going to happen. That's injustice and injustice. You know what I mean? So I show both sides to the spectrum of where you can see where accountability or not accountability, where family, because in my movie, family is another union thing that you see. And as well as then with Chris Jones and Jackie, I made them officers and high-ranking officers, because the first thing that usually comes out of an officer's mouth, they don't like cops anyway. So I made them cops. So now you can't say they don't like cops, because they are cops and they're high-ranking officials.
I like that. And I wrote down so much of this. The little girl who was adorable asks her parents, do white cops not like black people? Hate black people,
hate
right?
Black people.
Hate black people. And the mom, I thought they did a really nice job navigating that. And the mom was like, sometimes people are scared. And I couldn't tell if they were just saying that to her to not scare her, but in their mind, they were thinking, the majority of them do hate us. Or, so let me ask you, do you feel like the majority of white cops just don't like black people? Or is it the minority? Go ahead, sir.
I'm not going to say, if we look at the way the press rise, it will be looked as majority. But if we minimize it, I'm not going to say majority of them do not like blacks. But do I feel there is a different stigmatism with blacks? Yes, I do believe all officers have a certain stigmatism with blacks, because we're highly central, we're highly monitored, where it's a lot of black on black crime. So of course you're going to look at us a lot different, especially if it's being subjected and highly censored to more of a people, to the public eye, as opposed to other ethnicities that are involved with crime. But the reason why she had to speak in that temperature, because for one, that's like your child coming to you and saying like, well, does black cops hate white children? You know what I mean? Like how do you navigate that? Because whatever you tell that child is going to change the direction of the way that child thinks from the rest of her life. So you have to be very careful on how you teach that child, because their minds are like sponges, and they solely rely on everything that we say and what we do. So when she asks that, it's automatically gonna be a hit. Like, wow, like that's why they wanted to know first, where'd you hear that from?
Right.
Because we're cops.
Yep.
So you want to ask the question, excuse me, with a question first before you answer it wrong. So she said, my teacher asked, how was your dad? And my friend Peter said, white cops don't like black people. Look at the news.
Right.
And the way the news is showing, due to PDFs and these phones and these cameras, all you're seeing is cops basically assassinating blacks just like that. It's like women, children, babies. It's like, come on.
Taheim, is that, let me just push on that a little bit. Do you really feel that every day there's cops of all colors just assassinating people of color?
Well, when I say assassinate, they don't necessarily got to be assassinating them with the gun. They can assassinate them just with the integrity, just stripping them from their moral integrity by throwing up against the wall. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean with the gun. I could be speaking subliminally, you know what I mean, when I come to assassinating, you know what I mean? But just the ones that are being centrally monitored that the cameras are catching, it's like you're not even giving them a chance. Like you're not even wounding. It's like you only going through your first law of training, send a mass, then ask questions. Like, come on, like
I would push back on that, sir. The only time I can shoot my gun to protect myself and others, to prevent a crime from happening, and in the apprehension of a fleeing felon. We were never told shoot first, ask questions later. You would get federally prosecuted out here for something like that. I mean, it just doesn't fly. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, but it is happening. You got people running from the scene, getting shot in their back.
And while that does happen, I agree with you. There are instances. Of course, but they're isolated. You know what I mean? This isn't like 100 a day.
Like I said, I'm not savvy on the full statistics on the ones that are being monitored and the ones that are not. You know what I mean? So you have some that are being documented that the people are finding out. Then you have some that are not. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I believe there are a lot more than what the cameras have caught. Of course, you know what I mean? Because if the cameras caught a lot, you can only imagine what the cameras haven't caught. That's just how you got to look at it. If you could see 50 people get shot in 2 days from the camera, how many people do you think have gotten shot when the cameras weren't there, that's been shot? You know what I mean? And that's how you just have to weigh it out. You can't just say, well, it's only a few. Like
I hear what you're saying.
One is a problem.
One is a problem.
One is enough.
Yeah,
just like we spoke about the fire department, about how they're being judged if how many fires they put out. A fireman should be judged if you saved one life.
Right.
You stopped one life from dying. You did great.
Right.
It don't have to be 10. You saved one.
Yes. No, I completely understand. And I agree with you when it comes to like what was happening before the cameras. I agree. You can't, when you look at something like Project Innocence and you see these people who are exonerating, I think to date they've exonerated like 500 people in prison wrongfully accused, and 70% of them are male black men. Like as a researcher, I have to look at that and say that means something. I get it, right? So I'm not going to be blind to it. But there's also the component of like you can't hide the body, and if cops are shooting people, we know. I mean, it's just the Washington Post, has been rigorous on tracking the deaths of police officers. And again, like you and I agree, one is too many. But I also think if we take racism and somehow had a magic pill and just got rid of it, like racism didn't exist, for whatever reason, you're still going to have bad shootings because people do stupid things under stress. And that's what I see. I see all the videos. I see the videos of the white people getting shot, the 16-year-old girls getting shot, white girls. I see all the videos, not just the ones that are played on the big multimedia, Fox and CNN, and just, the salacious ones. I see the real bad ones too. And what I see is there's a problem across the board with like a warrior mentality, and I got to go home at night. And so I'm trying to broaden it for everybody to say, look, you and I agree. we gotta train the cops differently. But when I open with racism, it's like people, especially a room full of male Hispanic men, they're like, man, I'm not trying to hear that. I'm a minority. I'm not trying to hear your racism. Like, I get shut down.
Listen, and my thing is this, even with, listen, I don't take nothing from male Hispanics or Hispanics at all, but a lot of Hispanics denounce the fact that they're also a person of color as well. You know what I mean? So a lot of them don't stand on the front line. A lot do, but a lot don't stand on the front line with, like we went through earlier, the darker the skin. You know what I mean? They feel that if you ask them, are you black or are you white? I'm Hispanic. There is no middle. It's either you, what are you? You know what I mean? So, but a lot of them choose to take a stand and say, listen, I have nothing to do with them. That's black people, you know what I mean? Or things of that nature. So everyone has a way of separating or isolating a situation where the person that got shot, his last name wasn't Gomez or Riaz. His person that got shot may have been Williamson or Brown or things of that nature. But let me tap back into the training aspect. So when you're training these officers off of a threat, what is the response if a threat is they're being confronted with a threat?
Well, you have to. There is a shall. You shall make attempts to de-escalate, if feasible. De-escalate. And de-escalation can be defined as doing your best to reduce the intensity of the encounter. Now, certain people are good at that. I think if you and I were partners in a car, we're both talkers, right? We're from a city where you got to talk to people, and you and I could talk to people. So we're going to be better at de-escalate. Now, some people don't have that gift of gab, and that's hard to teach in a 6-month academy, to just be a
And what
talker.
do you do with them? If you know you can't teach them that, what do you do? Do you still put them on the force?
Oh yeah, they're still going to go there, and you hope to develop that skill set as you go.
But you can't develop that skill set as you go, because it's like putting a community fish in an aggressive fish tank. So if you already know that they don't know how to de-escalate a situation during training, you can never expect, when you place them in an aggressive environment, to de-escalate.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and I see it. It's well taken, for sure. Yeah, our academy is done by the state. So there is a state overboard, and the state says, here are the minimum boxes that need to be checked. And it's subjective, I guess, to see how good of a de-escalator you are. It's hard to do it. So like, well, they tried, I guess, but it isn't necessarily.
How do you determine it? How do you scale that?
It's not a pass fail the way like having to get over the wall is. Either you get over the wall or you don't. Like, that's a pass fail. Either you shoot a certain score or you don't. You know what I mean? There's not an arbitrary way to distinguish that. There's just some people who are better at it.
With your children, when you teach your children, you have children, right?
I do not, sir, but I have nieces and nephews.
Oh, so it's different. It's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With nieces and nephew is different than,
I agree,
if you had children of your own. You know what I mean? Because it's a different type of maternal or instinct that you would have when it comes to protecting your own. You know what I mean?
Sure, of course.
But my thing is, if I came to become a police officer, and every time you put me in like in a mock interview and how to de-escalate, and my second reaction, my first one is shut up, I don't want to hear that, and then my second is grab. Would you still pass me? Because you said there's no pass or fail. So
right.
Either way, it's just like, you just need to work on that. Basically, what you're saying, you have to work on that. Try to be a little more receptive to the person that's the listener, but right. You still push them through. So what you're doing, you're basically pushing an aggressive person whose second instinct, which technically is really their first, because they only chose to exhaust the first one, is to try to save face of the training. If the second one is, I'm gonna grab you, that's really what their first instinct really is, because there is no second if you're grabbing instantly.
Yeah, they're not doing that. No, they're not doing that in the academy. They more freeze than anything. It's not like they
Yeah, but
run up and they
that's
grab
like teaching
people.
you. That's like if you know a child, if you have a child and you know this person, the person in the park is has been involved with sexual encounters or male
Mm-hmm.
of a child pedophile, and he tells you, listen, I'm done with that. I won't touch kids no more. Like
Hmm.
I'm finished with that.
Right.
Would you let him babysit your
No,
child?
no, of course not.
So why? So that would be the same thing. Why would you still
Well, you and I
allow
agree on that.
an individual?
Yep.
So this is where policy comes in place, where
Yep.
it's like, yo, listen, because I start to feel like y'all feel like you're the type of guy that's needed in the streets because the streets are so tough. You got to be strong. Like, yo,
Mm.
you can't be having it. Like, yo, you're coming into a rough neighborhoods, and it's like you painting the picture. Like, yo, you're coming in the area. These guys are fucking animals. Like, yo, they kill like a sport. Like, yo, when you get out there, you protect your brother in that car. You protect the back of his head as he protects the back of your head. If you see him in danger, you put whoever else down that you need to put down and make sure you and your brother get home. It's almost like those are the words that are being indoctrinated into these people that are taking this test. You know what I mean?
And that's where I'd love for you to see some other. Are you ever out west at all? Do you ever come out this way?
Yeah, I do.
You got to link up with me when you're out here. I want to take you to the academy. I mean, I want to show you the training. I'd like for you to see how some of the agencies are doing it. New York's a different beast, man. It's 40,000 strong, and it's very historic, and there's a lot of tradition, and other West Coast agencies have that, but we're pretty progressive out here with that. We don't say those kinds of things. It doesn't come up like that. It's a lot softer of an academy.
See, but with me, I want to be around, like with this topic, right? This is a sensitive topic, so I want to be around people that are angry and aggressive and I want to hear them get angry and yell because the topic is so sensitive, and whatever they was taught, it may have been lies. Because how would any child that's been taught the wrong way and they find out later that was all lies can build up hatred, and then you got said, and then you've been taught so long that that you've been the superior one, you've been this, you've been that, and you've been taught that like in the Bible, the meek will inherit the earth. Blacks take over, they're gonna enslave you, yo. They're gonna take your guns, they're gonna do this to you. You start feeling like, well, listen, my people are not right, but they're gonna rape my women, they're gonna kill, they're gonna rape my daughter, they're gonna rape Kaylee, or they're gonna get a hold of Janet. You know what I mean? And it's all lies. So they wind up, when you get so deep out into the ocean, it's like, look, I'm already out here now. It's like, listen, I've already been taught from shores, this is the enemy. And now that I know that he probably is not the enemy, I'm so far out of touch from saying I apologize, that now it's like I might as well stick to what I've been going through for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? And that's a sad situation, because you can change at any given time. You don't have to continue on with that same lifestyle or that same mentality or that same teaching that you was taught. Sometimes those oaths need to be torn down and rebuilt and reshaped. You know what I mean?
And what I want to tear down and reshape are the perceptions. How about if I do it that way? The very biggest impact I had from your film was almost the opening line when the wife came on. Just forgive me, I didn't memorize all that. Chris's wife.
Jackie.
And she said, try to be a good cop. I have it written down. Try to be a good cop. There's not many of us left. And when I heard her say that, and I'm thinking, oh, we're 3 minutes into the movie, and it hit me, but then there were these groups of cops that were in these movies that seemed nice. There was the big muscular guy and like the French girl, and this very diverse cadre of people who were good cops, right? So what I want to tear down, like you say, tear down, my takeaway and action item is I want to come into contact with as many people I can and show them there's still good cops out there. Like, I need to show people that. I need you to believe that.
Of course. Oh, no, I never said I didn't believe that.
But I meant like the inner city people, you know what I mean? Like, I want them to see that.
No, listen, I don't doubt, there's not a doubt in my mind that we believe that there are some good cops out there. We just want to know, where are they? Why aren't they speaking up? You know what I mean? There are some, that are starting now to speak up, you know what I mean? And they're speaking in drones now, because by yourself, you know, I forgot the female officer that when she spoke out against the union official, they took her pension, and now she just rewarded the black woman. She just rewarded all that back pay and got her pension back from after being fired for speaking out, because it's almost like if you go against her, we're going to shut you down. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the fear factor that they put in place of you. You know what I mean? And you have to. Some people have to be sacrificed. You know what I mean? But the key is you have to, like you said, change the perception. The only way you can change perception is through production. It's showing change. You're not going to be able to do it no other way. Showing that you're going to hold your union officials held accountable for the mistakes that they made, and speaking out, saying, look, I'm not going to go out there and try to fulfill these quarters and take black people away from their family. They have kids too. You know, why should I strip them from their level? Would you like for us to come to Long Island, or would you like if I come to the suburban areas of Brentwood and LA and start harassing your youth and locking them up and saying, we just saw you smoking a joint, and now we want to put that record and stamp your name with now it prevents you from getting certain union official jobs. You know what I mean? That's usually how it works.
Right.
They set it up. All right, I'm gonna lock them up, whether it's be a small petty crime, but we're gonna offer a felony so you don't get no jail time. Like, listen, we let you go through the system. It scares you. We'll send you no bail, so you get a chance to see Rikers Island or the jail for 3 days to your 180 day. That's usually when the indictment's gonna drop. When you come out, now you probably feel like, oh, I don't want to go back. And then the lawyer come in the back and say, well, listen, they want to make a deal with you where you can go home today. You could take the felony, time served, and maybe do 6 months probation, but you'll go home today. And that's the key to hit. You'll go home today.
Yeah.
And then you say, yo, but they won't give me no bail? Nah, but this judge right here, they're not going to give you no bail. We have to wait till the judge changes. But you should think about the plea. And you sitting in a cell with all those other people saying, like, God damn, I don't want to go back, man. I want to go home to my family. I got a job. You know, I'm gonna lose my job if I don't. So you sacrifice your future by saying, you know what, I'm gonna take that in hopes that you won't get in no more trouble. And look, something else happens. You get yourself jammed up again. He's a convicted felon. Now you're going upstate, and you're a convicted felon because of a crime you never even committed. Then you find out from the second felony you could have beat the first one. Then you're like, God damn, I would. So it's a pattern.
That.
You know what I mean?
I have a friend, Dr. Bryant Marks, and he was on the show, and he's an implicit bias instructor, probably the premier implicit bias instructor in the nation. And he came to our agency, and I've worked with him on some outside agencies, and he's talked about that. He's talked about how certain family setups can absorb the hit, but a lot of people in the inner city can't absorb that hit. Like, hey, listen, we caught him with marijuana, you know, we're going to let it go. But in other situations, because he's from New York, so he talks about like the jump out squads, which looked like that was part of your movie too. That the guys in vans that are jumping out. See, the van. They call that the cage. That van that they put me in. Okay.
Because once they open the sliding door, it's a cage in the back that you're being placed in. So that van is called the cage, or they call it the blue van. There's different vans that patrol the communities in New York City. So
that seemed very personal. It seemed you had a pretty good intimate knowledge of those scenes, and those guys kept coming around, and you know it felt very real. We don't have that kind of setup. You know, but that felt very New York for whatever reason. It seemed very realistic.
It becomes antagonizing because the first thing they come at you for, you have any ID? That's a New York thing.
Okay, I was wondering about
Let me see some ID, and it's a harass. Like, yo, what for? What? What do you need to see ID for if a crime hasn't been committed?
Right
now, a crime an incident has being committed because you choose to want to rebel and give your ID. So now you're resisting.
Okay.
So it's a pattern. You have any ID? What you want my ID for? Put your hands against the wall.
Right.
Now it becomes an incident because now you refuse a direct order.
Right.
But a direct order that you're giving me just because of your own personal feelings. Like, what you want my ID for? I'm walking down the street. There was no crime. What the same way how when he says it when he speaks to him before the cop shooting, when he asks him, when he speaks in a language, the verbiage that police, did a call coming from Central? Like, I don't know if Central is the same word y'all use in LA. Is Central is the same? Is the same?
No, they would say like dispatch or something.
Oh, see, it's Central is dispatch in New York. It's Central. You know what I mean? Did the call coming from Central, and he was hitting them with the language, and you could tell his mind was already set. But another thing with when we showed the community ties, when he found marijuana in the college kid's pocket,
right?
When he asked him, well, how old are you? You know what I mean? Well, I'm a senior. That's what he told him. Like, yo, look, this one's on me.
Right. Next one's on you.
Next one's on you. You know what I mean? Just like that. Where if the tables could have turned, let's just say the other officer may have frisked him. It could have went either way.
Yeah.
He has something on him.
Yeah. I caught that.
You know what I mean? Because
absolutely.
I don't want to. I'm not here to take your future from you, because that's what it does. You shut a person's future down.
Absolutely.
Now, one felony. Now he can't go and bear arms no more because he's a felon. So now he can't apply for a license for a gun
can't get student loans, all kinds of things.
Can't get some apartment buildings now. They don't allow you in their apartment building when you try to apply to rent. They'll say, let me see. They do a background check, an NCIC check on you, and then they see, well, he's been convicted of a crime. But it was a marijuana crime, but that's still enough to say, no, we don't want you inside the building. You know what I mean? So it creates a collateral damage, you know what I mean? And it starts out small that people don't see it, but you don't really see your true life until you spread out, you know what I mean? 18, 19, until you get to your certain 20s, your mind hasn't even fully developed as a person. You're still trying to find direction.
Right.
But it'd be just like that. And a lot of us don't know the law and are afraid of the law that will tell your children, yo, just take the cop out and come home to your family. You're not gonna get in trouble no more anyway. It ain't a fact of getting in trouble. Now you just put a wall in front of me because I'm not gonna be able to apply for this no more. Now half of my life is gone.
Yeah.
So now my choices narrow down to where I have to do this now. And now in hopes that I don't get caught or things of that nature, you know what I mean? Because everyone wants the best in life, you know what I mean? But again, it must start with the teaching and start rooting out and vetting these bad officers and stop trying to be nice to them. Like, yo, it's either you protecting the brotherhood or you protecting the integrity of the shield and what it really upholds. Now, if you're protecting the shield, same way it showed with Officer Mitchell, McKenzie, when he locked his own brother up. He told him straight up and down, listen, I honor this badge. You know what I mean? Like, I love my brother, but I honor this badge. And only 3 people know what happened. That was them and God. You know what I mean? I wasn't there. And that's what a true officer that protects the integrity of the oath, regardless of family or not. Like, I will bend as much as I can. But when I feel you trying to dictate and change the narrative and make it harder on us, then I will lock you up, because the more crimes that you keep and more unjust that you keep implementing on people, the more danger you place on your fellow brother that's in that vehicle. Because the person that's usually committing the injustice is usually not the one that gets caught. It's usually the good officer sitting in that patrol car that someone runs down and opens fire on him and says, I'm gonna make an example out of these officers. You know what I mean? Which is sad. You know what I mean? That's why you have to start vetting them out. Say, yo, I got to get you out, because if I don't get you out, my son done took the test tomorrow and may be a great guy and get murdered just because he's innocent. Yeah. And they want to make an example like, yo, you shot one of us, we're gonna blow one of your kids' heads off. And that's usually how it happens. And that's the level that it's starting to gradually reach. Like when you see with the congressman is saying, after Mark Jeffries shoots the officer for killing his brother for a mistaken cell phone. Yeah. When he tells him, you see people are starting to take justice within their own hands now. Yes. That's what soon get ready to happen, because when we call the police, we're being killed. So it's like, damn, I can't even call you to help me without you coming out to make me become a victim, and I'm the one that called you for help. So it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna start taking justice into my own hands and weigh my options. And that's what you see, what they say, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
And it's funny. It's funny, sir. You'll have cops use that same phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how more alike the people on either side are. They're so much more alike. And I think if they got to know each other a little bit, you'd get a lot more, you would just get a lot more, I don't know what the word is, progress. I'm looking for progress.
And that's because there's oaths. There's oaths regardless. You know what I mean? When you choose your community, because it's a community.
Uh-huh.
Like in your home, like in your house, your mother said, whatever happens in the house stays in this house. You don't go to the street and tell us what's going on in this house. Whatever's happening within us, you stick with your people. This is who we are. So of course, we're gonna share some of those same values with that. You know, that's just the human nature. The same way with I'm gonna make a home in my family. By any means, everyone wants to get back home to their loved ones. No one wants to be the victim looking up at the sky, taking their last breath. People were like, listen, I'm going home to lay in bed with my children, you know what I mean? By any means, you know, and I'll take my chances by the legal justice system. But the difference is you're enticing a situation and you're hiding behind your weapon, knowing you're wrong. So you're coming into a high escalated situation in any neighborhood. When whites come in contact with black, it's already a high alert. And then you're aggressive.
Yeah.
So you're not even speaking in a tone like, excuse me, sir.
Right.
We got a call. If you could just lift your shirt up, show that you don't have nothing around your waist, that would de-escalate my safety. Right. And then I can tell you why I'm here. But instead 9 cars pull up, guns all out. Get your hands up. Get on the floor. I'm going to tell you one more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, that changes the direction.
Absolutely.
That makes it like, oh, word? Like you're going to treat me less than a man? And that's what it feels like. You treating me less than a man. It's like you speaking, not caring how your words affect the listener. Yeah. And that's very important. And that's what I wonder when training, because if training is not showing that, then that means they're not being confronted with someone of color, of someone from the neighborhood. I believe some of these trainings, you should bring people from the street to confront them in here to see how they really gonna respond to real life situations, because that running around, climbing poles, crawling on the grass, that's not happening inside the community. You know what I mean? In LA, you ride it down the street where you might run across an AR-15. You know what I mean? But so you want to know how to de-escalate it by saying, look, listen, I'm willing to put my weapon to the side, put yours to your side, and then we can talk. You still hide it behind your vehicle, so you're protected with steel around you. Yeah. And you could de-escalate it through that instead of just jumping out the car, freeze, bang, bang, bang.
Right.
Like what you expect you to do. The same way Chris Jones did. What did you expect him to do? You came and he's telling you, I'm an officer and I'm using the language to show you. Yep. I'm telling you, my shield is across the street in the Jeep. Just have your partner go over there to validate it. But no, you have a hidden agenda. So you shoot. So what you expect me to do? My instincts, my training instinct kicks in. Survival. Right. Oh shit, he's trying to kill me. I just made an oath to my wife. I'm coming back home. I'm a return fire. And if I die, he's going to die with me.
Right. Well, I think that you said something, and I think that is something we can collaborate on. We should have people who are from inner city and say, look, I'll test these young cops. Let me teach them what it's like to deal with someone that's irate. And then we got to train them. Like you said, we're not training on de-escalation. We're mandating it. We're putting in policies, but policies aren't going to work unless we train people on how to do it. And I could see a future where you and I could get people, from maybe the inner city and say, look, I'll show these cops what it's like to get yelled at. And then that when it really happens in real time, like that one character, the female was saying, look, these guys are scared. They grow up in the suburbs and their first encounter with us is in the inner city.
Is a gang filled with tattoos all over his face.
They're overwhelmed. That overwhelms somebody.
Of course.
So maybe
you do have some that are like that. You know what I mean? But that's why a lot of times before they used to have policing communities that they're from. So you already know them. Yeah. So if it's a domestic dispute, I already know that you and Denise are always fighting. So I can come into your home and you can call me by my first name, like, Jack, listen, just take a walk. You know what I mean? Before
Yeah.
I just lock you up and embarrass you in front of your kids and tackle you, put my knee all on your body.
Right.
I don't want to dehumanize you and make you look less than a man. Just take a walk and let's try to neutralize this. You know what I mean? Instead of coming in with aggression, like
Right.
the same way with the cell phone, it came in with aggression.
Yes.
First thing he jumped out. Let me see some ID. His friend is telling him, officer, I got him. I got him, officer. It's not a problem. First thing he does is push.
Right.
When we was filming, the officer didn't do that originally.
Oh.
I had to tell him, you are in control.
Uh-huh.
If he tells you, I got him, you remember, you the officer, take control.
Oh.
And he came in and took control and pushed him.
Right.
And then grabbed him and mistaken cell phone automatic sent a glare.
Right.
That he had a weapon. That shows the fear.
Yeah.
Or he's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Like, come on, we not thinking about just going around killing cops, you know what I mean? Or killing people in general, you know what I mean? Like, but we want to protect what's ours as well, you know what I mean? So if he would have just said, listen, can we have a discussion?
Yep.
Like, all right, that's your friend. Bring him here. I would like to have a discussion. You know what I mean? Let's talk. I just want to see his ID. I'll give it right back. I'll bring his kid's mother over. Let's just de-escalate this. Let me show you. Let me give you some information on how you can see your child without beefing out here with what you're doing. It's only hurting the child. But instead, you come in a high red zone area that's already aggressive.
Right.
And then you pulling up with aggression.
Right.
Aggression with aggression leads to disaster. That's just the way it goes. That's what it breeds. And that's where we failing a lot. You know what I mean? We're not giving the proper training, or we're still pushing them through. It's like, yo, nah, you failed.
Yeah.
I can't put you out there because you a hothead.
Right.
If I let you put you out there, you might program your partner in a vehicle to turn out to be just as hot. And then now I got two hotheads. So before I'll let you change the one that you drive with every day, you're not making it this term. You may need to try next year.
Right.
But this year, I can't afford to have you because we're already at a high alert problem with communities right now.
Yeah.
And things like that. And then another scene when he asked him, could he retrieve the radio back? If he didn't have community ties,
right,
you wouldn't get that radio back. But he was able to go into the community because he was respected in the community.
Yeah.
And retrieved the radio back. But community ties does that. Lack of community ties, it's like, yo, y'all not getting that back. Get it the way you want it.
And this is, and look, you're the producer. You know this better than I do. And I wonder when he said, fuck the police, was that a little bit of a callback to the old rap days with the music? Part of me wanted him to say, hey man, they ain't all bad. But I know that's wishful thinking.
No. Yeah, listen. For one, you can't use Ice-T's music as arts imitating life with his music. His music is a reflection of what he's seen in his community. But as you see, he's been a cop on Law and Order for several years. Right. So that shows you his balance and his mindset.
Yeah.
However, of course, you can't expect him to say they're all good. Like, nah, that's because we're not going to just say that. That was something that the female was able to say. Deb was able to say, look, which people would not expect her to say that, because everyone thinks blacks is only talk about fuck the police, we hate the police, kill the police. You do have them, but then you have some that's like nah, you can't blame them all. Same way you got your officers, I'm going out there to shoot some blacks. Then you have some like, nah, we're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
So we can't dismiss or rule out that, you know what I mean? That those people exist, but your job is when you detect that problem exists, is to get rid of them. It's not penalize them or mandate it, like how we said we mandated instead of rule. Like, it's got to be like, nah, listen, you got to go. You know what I mean? You need to do some more training, then you can come back. But until then, we can't have you in here because you're going to lead to this officer being killed, because it's usually the other officer that dies, not the bad one that's being an asshole.
Right.
Like you see in the movie, the cop who got knocked out wasn't the asshole cop.
Right.
That was his partner. He's protecting his partner.
Yeah. He was trying to
You
calm
know
him
what I mean?
down.
But he wasn't the asshole.
Right.
The other one was the asshole, but he gets knocked out.
Yeah.
It always happens like that. Let me get him. We're gonna drop him.
Yeah.
We can't get this one right here.
I hear you, man.
You know what I'm saying?
I've had you now for almost 2 hours, and I want to be respectful of your time.
For sure.
And I want to have you back. So I really appreciate you giving me your take on this. And there's so much more. I feel like we could go for even longer, but I usually end with a question I give to the guests. And if you could reframe, if you could take a perspective and say, look, let's just look at this from a different angle to try to solve this problem. What would you reframe in the race and the policing sort of controversies and crisis that we're dealing with to help make some progress?
Well, we know in life, you can never really remove race, because that's what life, how you look at it, race is always going to be there. But I would say respect your counterpart, respect that person, that man or that woman. Don't be so quick to pass judgment on them. You know what I mean? Hear them out. Not everyone is guilty. And it's like not everyone is innocent. Hear them out. You know what I mean? Before you so quick to hide behind your weapon. That's what I would think. And the main thing is going to always be is accountability. Like, hold the officials accountable for their actions, because their action causes reactions. You know what I mean? And the reactions is what makes a department look bad. And remove these quarters. I think a lot of these quarters need to be removed. You know what I mean? If you're my partner and you get 3 arrests, that means I get 3 arrests.
Right.
Or the precinct gets 3 arrests. Why? It shouldn't be an individual censorship. It should be a general censorship, you know what I mean, of a data bank. If the precinct tallied up 100 arrests in 1 month, the precinct did 100 arrests. It's not this one did 100 arrests. Now we're moving him up to be detective because he has 100 arrests. He took 10 guns off the street. But how many people did he have to beat up, and how many that he had to do before he found those 10 guns? You know what I mean? It's like any person that stands in the rain long enough is going to get wet. That's just that's just the reality to it. You know what I'm saying? That's just, come on. If I'm targeting 100 people a day, you're bound to find some guns.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's just the
way. But at what
that's
expense?
And at what expense? That's like if I come into a rural white area of trailer park, if I run down on 100 whites, it's a matter of time before I find PCP or some Oxycontin or a needle or meth or needle in one pocket. You know what I mean? That's just the reality to it. You're gonna hit your mark eventually. You know what I mean? But your objective shouldn't always be that. Your objective is to keep the crime rate down. You know what I mean? Just because a person, you may think a person has a gun, I don't mean he's going to use it. The crime, as long as it hasn't been pulled out, the crime rate is down.
Right.
That's the whole objective, keeping the crime rate down. Like, we all know there's snakes on the floor, but a snake ain't a problem until he raises his head. If he don't raise his head, he could move all around your feet. We know there's snakes on the floor, but just don't bother them. They won't bother you.
It's interesting. I like it, man.
That's just the reality to it.
Yeah. I really appreciate you being just raw and uncensored and just speaking your mind and from your heart. I enjoyed your film. I enjoyed being able to discuss it with you. I think it was Ice-T that said that. He said, I might be misquoting, but respect begets respect, or respect earns respect, was something like that.
Correct.
And I thought,
exactly.
Yeah, I thought, that is at the end of the day.
To get respect is to give respect.
Right. And I want to work with you in future endeavors. I'd like to work on that training idea. I think we could revolutionize and really put some meaning behind de-escalation and teach these young officers. That would be dope. I think that's going to be our call to action, you and I.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in support of that. Just let me know.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Thank you. I enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening to Policing in America with Sergeant Tom Datro. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, or if you have any suggestions on how to make positive change in regards to policing in America, head to my website and send me a message. Thanks for listening.